She arrived alone. No rank, no reputation, just a sealed envelope and a rifle case no one took seriously. They called her a joke, gave her an impossible target just to watch her fail. But when the trigger clicked and the steel rang at 150 meters, they didn't laugh. Because what none of them knew was that she wasn't sent to learn from them. She was sent to replace them. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching this from? And what's the most powerful story of redemption you've ever seen or felt? Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. Eagle Ridge Naval Training Range, wind 23 knots, cross and visibility low, time limit 30 seconds. The wind clawed across the range like a living thing. It rattled the steel silhouette target 350 meters out, made flags dance wildly at uneven intervals, and carried the bitter tang of salt inland from the Atlantic. The air was thick with moisture, visibility wavering just above ground level. It was not a day for shooting, and yet everyone had stopped to watch. 12 of the Navy's top snipers stood in a loose formation along the firing line at Eagle Ridge. Men with multiple combat deployments, combat instructors, one with 3 confirmed kills past 2,000 meters. They had all turned their heads away from their scopes, drawn by something they hadn't seen in years, a joke they thought would burn itself out. But the joke had just racked around into a Barrett Mk-22 and was now lying prone at position 7, breathing steady, eyes unreadable, hands unnervingly calm. Cassidy Harper. Specialist, according to her badge, a boot with under 2 years in service, barely 5'7" in standard issue fatigues, no unit patch, no rank insignia, no spotter, just her, a massive rifle, and a target no one hit in training, not even under ideal conditions. Master Chief Owen Wallace stood just behind her, arms folded, his face betrayed nothing. But those who knew him well, men like Sergeant Cal Brooks and Gunnery Sergeant Ty Jenkins, saw the tension in his shoulders. The same look he'd worn years ago, on missions where the success rate hovered in the single digits. 30 seconds. Harper, Wallace said flatly. She didn't respond, just shifted slightly, her cheek finding the weld against the cheek pad. Wind still rising, time evaporating. Ridiculous. Brooks muttered to no one in particular. This whole damn thing. She won't fire, Jenkins whispered. She's stalling. But she was not. Through her scope, Cassidy had already measured the cross-wind vectors off the rising cliff line. She noted the subtle shimmer of heat distortion from the morning sun on the wet field, factored in barometric pressure drop from the approaching weather front, watched the target sway left, then jerk slightly right-mounted on a randomized track system the team used for advanced evasive simulations. She waited. At the 20-second mark, the wind paused, not stopped, but paused. Enough. Cassidy exhaled once, then fired. The Barrett's recoil thundered across the range, loud and visceral, but Cassidy absorbed it without flinch or blink. Her left hand remained stable on the forend. Her right never left the grip. Her legs were locked in classic sniper triangle. Her body didn't move. Nothing moved except the eyes of 12 men and 1 Master Chief, who tracked the flight path with invisible instinct. 1 second passed, 2, 3, and then ting. A high, metallic pop returned from the distance like a taunt. Direct hit. Jenkins' mouth dropped open. Brooks blinked as if reality had misaligned. Thompson muttered something under his breath that no one caught. The range officer spoke next, his voice cracking through the comms tower center mass. Moving target. Range 3150 meters. Confirmed. Silence. Wallace looked down at her. You got lucky, he said, but even he didn't believe it. Cassidy rose slowly. She cleared the weapon with methodical precision. Safety on, chamber checked, muzzle angled away. Every movement textbook, only she hadn't been taught these in any textbook. Permission to continue the qualification. Master Chief, she asked, standing at attention. A few snorts of disbelief scattered among the shooters. You don't get a qualification off a stunt, Brooks snapped. That wasn't training. That was whatever the hell that was. Before Wallace could respond, a voice cut through the air like a scalpel. Clear, commanding, unexpected. She works for me. Every head turned. At the edge of the range, where the access road met the blast wall, a figure had appeared. Admiral Douglas Parson, commander of Naval Special Warfare Training Command. He wore no cap, no entourage, just the weathered navy blue jacket with gold insignia and the authority that came with it. The kind of authority you didn't question. Admiral on deck, Wallace called, snapping to attention. The others followed instantly. Parson walked forward, slow and deliberate, his boots leaving muted thuds in the gravel. When he reached Wallace, he didn't stop. Instead, he turned to Cassidy. At ease, Major. It took the men a full second to register what he'd said. Cassidy Harper gave a single nod and stood relaxed. Her bearing didn't change, but something shifted in the air around her. A recognition, a breaking of the illusion. Major Wallace repeated, blinking. Parson faced the assembled shooters. I believe you've just witnessed the introduction of your new commanding officer for the Advanced Integration Directive. He paused, letting that land, or as some of you might have heard in rumors, the Ghost Program. Thompson turned white. Jenkins looked like he'd seen a specter. Brooks opened his mouth, then closed it again. Wallace said nothing. His gaze remained locked on Cassidy, and for the first time in his career, he had no idea who he was really looking at. Parson stepped aside, letting Cassidy take his place. She turned to face the men who had mocked her, dismissed her, and only moments earlier refused to believe what they were seeing. My name, she said calmly, is Major Cassidy Harper. I am the former chief instructor for Ghost Unit 3. I've served 14 years under direct strategic deployment, including 7 classified field campaigns. I hold the current record for confirmed eliminations beyond 2,800 meters, 37 total, 5 in active environments. I was assigned here under cover to evaluate readiness for the next phase of sniper doctrine evolution. Another pause. She looked around. No one moved. You are not being replaced, she added. You're being invited forward, but make no mistake what happened today. That's baseline. She let the words linger. No applause, no cheers, just shifting postures, racing minds, a recalibration of reality. Wallace exhaled slowly, and for the first time in years, the man known for building legends found himself wondering if he had just met one. The Barrett Mk-22 still sat on its bipod behind her, barrel cooling in the breeze, scope glass catching the rising sun. Somewhere out there, beyond the steel and the silence, the rules had just changed, and Eagle Ridge would never be the same again. 2 weeks earlier, Eagle Ridge Naval Sniper Facility, she arrived on foot. No transport, no escort, no fanfare, just a standard issue sea bag slung over her shoulder and a slim black case that looked too heavy for someone her size to carry that far without pausing. The checkpoint at Eagle Ridge wasn't used to walk-ins. Not here. Not at what was essentially hallowed ground for America's most elite marksmen. Sergeant Cal Brooks squinted into the morning sun as she approached. He was halfway through a thermos of black coffee, boots up, assuming another day of business as usual, until he saw her. The uniform was crisp, regulation, no patches, no rank displayed on the collar. Her gait was measured, not tentative but not defiant either, controlled. Brooks stood up slowly, already annoyed. ID, he barked. She stopped exactly 3 feet from the gate, met his stare with neither challenge nor submission, and produced her military ID with her left hand. He glanced at it once, then twice. Specialist, he asked, emphasizing the word like a punchline. What are you doing here? Boot Cassidy Harper replied evenly. Reporting as ordered. Eagle Ridge, Sniper Range Division. Brooks scoffed, waving the ID in the air like a joke on paper. This range is for advanced qualifications only. You want the beginner's line? That's 2 towns west. I have orders, she said. retrieving a sealed envelope from the side of her case. The seal was real, navy blue, embossed, Admiral's crest. Brooks's smirk faltered just slightly. He took the envelope, tore it open, and scanned the contents. Then he cursed soft, but clear. He tapped the comm on his shoulder. "Chief Wallace, you're going to want to see this." 10 minutes later, Master Chief Owen Wallace stood under the observation overhang, reading the document for himself. The signature was unmistakable. Rear Admiral Douglas Parson, Commander, Naval Special Warfare Training Command. Wallace didn't look up immediately. When he did, his gaze was hard. "You're the one the Admiral sent?" he asked. "Yep, Master Chief." He motioned toward the range. "That doesn't explain why you're here. This is not a test site for recruits. I was assigned here for live fire evaluation of what myself." That earned a low laugh from one of the shooters down the line. "Jenkins, probably." Wallace handed the letter back to Brooks. "Put her on position 5. Issue whatever she needs. Let's see what kind of entertainment the Admiral thinks we're due." Word spread fast. By the time Cassidy lay prone at position 5, the entire range had found some excuse to pause. They didn't stop shooting, not entirely, but they were no longer focused on their own drills. They were watching her. She chose the Barrett MRAD over lighter platforms, a curious choice for someone her size. No one offered to help her load it. No one thought she'd last through a magazine. Wind was coming in off the ocean, 20 knots and rising, variable gusts, heat distortion low to the horizon. It was the kind of day even seasoned shooters waited out. Not her. "What's she doing?" Jenkins asked, nudging Thompson beside him. Thompson didn't answer right away. He watched her movements instead. Cassidy adjusted the bipod, clicked the stock to match her shoulder alignment, and began her sight-in ritual. It was too fluid, too natural for someone green. She didn't overcorrect, didn't second-guess, didn't check with a spotter. "What's the range?" she asked the line officer without looking up. "Target plates at 2,750 meters. The officer replied. "No one's hit it this week. Wind direction, south-southeast. Crosswind. Partial tail. Gusts up to 23 knots. Cassidy gave a single nod. Wallace stepped beside her on the line. "You can pack up any time. Specialist. No shame in admitting this isn't your level." "I'm fine, and sir. You think you're going to hit that plate? I'm not here to think." Wallace raised an eyebrow. "One shot," he said. "Make it count." The Barrett roared once. The echo rolled across the range like a thunderclap. Cassidy didn't flinch. She stayed prone, eyes still behind the scope, hands still resting on the bolt. The recoil absorbed cleanly into her stance. Silence. Then came the sound. Ting. High. Metallic. Undeniable. "Hit confirmed," the line officer said, sounding confused. "Center mass. Range 2750. "Impossible," Jenkins said. "Damn lucky," Brooks added. But Thompson's expression had changed. He stared not at the target, but at Cassidy, watching how she reset her scope, how she packed the rifle with quiet precision, how none of this seemed like luck. Something about her technique tugged at a memory, a name he'd only heard whispered during a deployment at Bagram. A ghost unit, not officially listed, used only when nothing else worked. He didn't say anything. Not yet. Wallace met her again outside the equipment shed. She was cleaning the rifle herself, seated on the concrete step, methodical. "You're not standard Navy," he said quietly. Cassidy paused, then resumed her work. "I didn't claim to be..." He studied her face for a moment. "That wasn't a fluke. You read the wind like someone who's been in live fire. Real terrain." She said nothing. Wallace folded his arms. "Tomorrow, 0600. Just you and me. We shoot 3 rounds at increasing difficulty. If I beat you, you pack up and leave." Cassidy looked up. "And if I win, then I stop trying to make sense of who you are and start worrying about what you're here to do." "Deal," she said simply. That night, Thompson stayed late at the range, recalibrating his scope. He couldn't shake the image of her prone form, the exactness of her hand placement, the speed at which she'd calculated variables. He'd seen instructors struggle with half that wind, and the way she walked off afterward, no triumph, no showmanship. It wasn't the shot that disturbed him. It was that she expected to hit it. Ghost program, he whispered to himself. He didn't know for sure. But tomorrow morning, he planned to find out. Cassidy slept lightly that night. She always did before duels. The air was colder up here on the coast. The barracks, Spartan, stripped of all comfort. But that suited her. She didn't come here to rest. In her footlocker was a single photo, face down. She never looked at it the night before a shoot, across the hallway, in a separate room. Wallace was going through his old journals. He hadn't written anything down in years. But now, something about this woman unsettled him. He scribbled a note. Harper, not just skill, something else. Unknown vector. Verify. Then he closed the book and set his alarm for show 500. Tomorrow wouldn't be routine. It would be reckoning. And for both of them, the range would decide what happened next. Iwana 600 hours Eagle Ridge. Wind conditions variable. The sky was just beginning to pale when Wallace stepped onto the range. No one else was there. No spotters. No staff. The entire facility was still asleep by design. This wasn't a sanctioned drill. It wasn't part of any training rotation. This was personal. Cassidy was already waiting at position 9. She wore the same uniform as the day before. No rank, no insignia, but something in her posture had shifted. Not pride, not arrogance, just certainty. She wasn't there to prove anything, only to confirm what she already knew. Wallace nodded once. She returned it without words. They each carried their own rifles. Wallace's custom-modified MK Mod 7, worn smooth from a decade of use. Cassidy brought the same Barrett MRAD she'd used yesterday, cradled it like an extension of her own spine. You know the rules, Wallace said. 3 stages. I call the shot. We fire alternately. Closest grouping wins the round. Cassidy adjusted her gloves. Agreed. No spectators. No clock. Just skill. And judgment, she added quietly. Wallace squinted at her. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see. Stage 1, 200 meters, stationary target, flat win. The target was a standard silhouette, slightly elevated on a wooden frame. Nothing fancy. This was meant to test core fundamentals: breath control, trigger discipline, scope alignment. Wallace took the first shot. He lay prone, legs at perfect 45 angles, breathing synced with the wind's rhythm. At the bottom of his third exhale, he squeezed the trigger. Ting. Clean hit. 1 inch left of dead center. Cassidy took her position, adjusted the bipod height, and nestled into the rifle like it was muscle memory. She didn't wait long. Her shot came 5 seconds after her eye hit the scope. Ting. The plate sang again. When the spotter drone returned visual confirmation, both hits were measured within 1 inch of center. Cassidy's dead on. Wallace is slightly off. Draw, Wallace said. Cassidy nodded. Round 2, stage 2. 800 meters, moving target lateral. Drift at 15 km/h. Wallace adjusted his zero manually. No spotter. Just him in the wind. The target moved left to right across a quarter-kilometer stretch. The slope was uneven. Background cluttered with brush and broken terrain designed to throw off aim. He waited 6 seconds, calculating the speed of drift, then fired. Ting. Right shoulder hit, not center, but a success. Cassidy went prone silently. No verbal prep, no posture adjustment after settling. She simply tracked the target for 3 seconds, made a micro correction on elevation, and squeezed. Ting. When the visual confirmation came through, her shot had split the metal where shoulder met torso. Wallace exhaled. You win that one? No comment, she replied. He wasn't sure if it was humility or mercy. Stage 3. 2 or 450 meters spiraling wind. Random gusts. This wasn't a test anymore. At this distance, bullet trajectory could be altered by the Earth's rotation, thermals from the canyon below, even distant weather fronts 30 miles out. Wallace had never trained anyone to hit this reliably. Most days, it was just theory. He stepped into position. The ground was loose shale. Moisture hovered over the surface like mist. He adjusted windage, factored barometric drop, watched the flags flutter for 7 seconds, then fired. Ting! The shot struck just right of center. Not perfect, but damn close. He rose slowly, jaw set. Cassidy didn't rush. She knelt once more, laid flat, and closed her eyes for a full 5 seconds before opening them again. Her hand rested lightly on the cheek weld. She counted something beneath her breath. 3, 2, 1. Crack. A pause. Ting. Wallace narrowed his eyes. Cassidy cycled the bolt and fired again. Crack. Ting. Then again. Crack. Ting. 3 shots, all in under 10 seconds. Wallace stared at the target through binoculars. 3 impacts, dead center, clustered within a circle the size of a quarter. What the hell was that? He muttered. Cassidy stood without a word, set the safety, and slung the rifle. Wallace was still looking downrange. That violates every long-range shooting principle I've ever taught, he said. You didn't wait between heartbeats. You didn't hold breath. You didn't even recheck elevation. Cassidy met his gaze, steady and neutral. We don't fight the body, she said. We work with it. Wallace blinked. You're telling me you shot through your heartbeat, I synchronized with it. That's not how this works. She shrugged slightly. It is now. He followed her off the range in silence. They reconvened in the mission control hut an hour later. The sun was fully up now, burning the last of the fog off the coast. Wallace poured 2 coffees. Neither asked if the other wanted one. Cassidy finally broke the quiet. You wanted answers. I think I just watched them happen. Not all of them. She opened her notebook. A single photograph was tucked into the front sleeve. She slid it across the table. Wallace picked it up. 2 people in camo, crouched behind a desert ridge. 1 adult, 1 teenager, both holding suppressed bolt-action rifles, both with the same eyes. Is that my father? Cassidy said. Victor Harper. You probably know the name. Wallace's brow furrowed. That's not possible. Victor Harper was erased, officially killed in a vehicle accident in '08. I read his manual. I've taught half his range theory. I know, she said quietly. He wrote most of it on napkins when I was 9. Wallace's voice softened. Why would they erase him? Cassidy hesitated, then answered carefully. He defected from doctrine, started rewriting sniper theory based on neuromuscular harmony, perceptual overlap, even internal rhythm sequencing. He said the math didn't matter unless the body could absorb it. They thought he went rogue. They thought he went too far. Wallace stared at her. And I was raised in that thinking. Schooled at range before I was 16. Certified in every known rifle class by 17. First op at 18. Ghost by 19. He leaned back slowly. Jesus. Cassidy's voice dropped. No birth records. No official enlistment file. My Navy ID fabricated. Everything's compartmentalized. Even my past deployments are filed under operational decoys. Wallace rubbed his temple. You're not a specialist. You're a ghost. I was. Then why here? Why now? Because the edge is getting closer, she said, voice level. And I'm tired of watching good shooters die while using outdated rules. Wallace looked at the photo again. You're his legacy. No, she said, I'm the evolution. They sat in silence for a few seconds. Then Wallace set the photo down gently. You beat me? 3 stages. Cassidy offered nothing. Wallace met her eyes. So what happens now? We train your team, she said, and we change the future of precision warfare. He didn't respond right away, but when he did, It was a quiet nod. Then let's get to work. Eagle Ridge Naval Facility. Week 1 of integration training. Cassidy stood at the front of the range briefing room. No podium, no PowerPoint, just her voice, a whiteboard behind her, and 11 of the best conventional snipers in the U.S. Navy watching her with a mixture of skepticism, fatigue, and reluctant curiosity. "You've all been trained to shoot between heartbeats," she said, "to slow your breath, reduce your body to a machine." She paused. "Let that settle. The ghost method rejects that." A few brows raised. Brooks shifted uncomfortably. Cassidy stepped forward. "Instead of resisting your body, you learn to move with it. You fire with your rhythm, not despite it, because your body isn't the obstacle. It's the weapon." Jenkins exhaled. "Here we go." But Thompson leaned forward slightly, his arms crossed, eyes narrowed not in disbelief, but in deep processing. Cassidy looked around the room. "This will challenge everything you've been taught. And that's the point." No one spoke. Wallace, standing near the back, gave a nod. Let her lead, and the training began. The first 3 days broke every expectation. Instead of dissecting ballistics, Cassidy made them march blindfolded across uneven terrain, measuring distance not with devices, but with breath patterns. She made them shoot standing with no stabilizer, tracking the oscillation of their natural sway, then correcting for it without ever freezing. Brooks was the first to speak out. "This isn't sniping. This is yoga with rifles." Cassidy didn't argue. She just had him repeat the drill again, this time under a 5-knot crosswind and moving target. He missed twice. Thompson, on the other hand, began to adapt with startling speed. He stopped relying on formula and started using instinct. His grouping tightened, his timing quickened. By day 4, he was out shooting instructors who had trained him just 6 months earlier. Cassidy noticed. At the end of one session, she called him over quietly. "You think in layers," she said. "It's rare. I've always tried to overcorrect. Now I'm just letting it happen." She smiled faintly. "That's the shift. When it feels like less effort, you're doing it right." By the end of week 1, results were undeniable. Average hit probability at 2,000 meters had increased by 22%. Reaction times had dropped by 17%. For the first time, shooters were hitting moving targets at over 2,300 meters with no spotters. All except Brooks. His performance plateaued, then began to decline. The more he resisted, the worse he became. And Cassidy saw it. "Sergeant," she said one afternoon after a missed drill, "we need to talk." Brooks avoided eye contact. "Permission to be dismissed." "Not granted," Wallace observed from a distance. Arms crossed. Cassidy lowered her voice. "You're not here to resist. You're here to evolve." "I didn't sign up for voodoo," he snapped. "I signed up to shoot, and now you're missing shots you used to make blindfolded." He stiffened. "You have no idea what this place means to some of us, what we've given to be here." Cassidy stared at him for a long moment. "Exactly. That's why it matters what happens next." But Brooks didn't answer. He simply walked away. That night, Cassidy received an alert on her secure line. Encrypted, level red. She opened it in her quarter's eyes, scanning the lines fast. Flag comms, unauthorized encrypted traffic traced to internal network. Suspected breach. Subject embedded within sniper training group. Surveillance confirmed scheduled disruption event. She rose immediately. No hesitation, no gear, just a single message to Wallace's comm. Lockdown code Raven 9. Initiate silent lockdown. Trust no one. The facility was dark. Midnight. Fog rolled in from the ocean, covering the asphalt in cold vapor. Cassidy moved fast across the grounds, heading for the admin building where the breach signature had been traced. Halfway there, she sensed it. Movement, left flank, subtle. She didn't slow down, just adjusted her route by half a meter and waited. The first attacker struck from behind the maintenance shed. He moved fast civilian build but trained hands injector in palm, aiming for her neck. Cassidy sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, and dropped him with one precision strike to the trachea. Silent, surgical. Two more emerged, one from the shadows by the perimeter fence, the other from the blind side of the generator. Cassidy rolled behind the cable spool, flipped the first into the ground with a knee lock, then blocked the second's dart gun with the injector she'd stolen from the first. She ducked under a swing, grabbed the wrist, and drove her elbow into his clavicle. 3 down, 40 seconds. None of them were Navy. All of them were contractors, and all carried gear marked by a private firm with quiet ties to a rival defense project, one that had been losing influence as Ghost integration gained traction. Within minutes, Wallace arrived with armed security. Base was sealed. Cassidy stood in the hallway, blood on her sleeve, breathing steady. "They weren't here to kill me," she said. "They came to extract." Wallace's face darkened. Why, she handed him a flash drive she'd retrieved from the third attacker. Encrypted orders. Operation Albatross, covert opposition to Ghost integration, funded by internal factions who see Ghost as a threat to legacy programs. Too much money at stake. Wallace gritted his teeth. And they had help on the inside. Cassidy nodded grimly. "One of ours." By morning, Admiral Parson had arrived. He met them in the secure room, satellite links active, legal observers silent behind glass. Cassidy debriefed him fully, then handed him Brooks's encrypted communications. It wasn't speculation anymore. It was proof. Brooks had been in contact with a covert preservationist cell, retired officers and defense contractors, lobbying to halt Ghost expansion. He'd been feeding them progress reports, psychological profiles, and daily integration metrics. Parson didn't hesitate. Effective immediately. Brooks is relieved of duty and placed under federal investigative hold. Will prosecute quietly but completely. Wallace stood at attention. "Sir, what about the program?" Parson turned to Cassidy. "You still believe this team has potential?" She didn't blink. "More than ever." Parson nodded. "Then you're being moved. Full relocation to Greystone facility. Nevada, off-grid, top-tier security, accelerated phase 2. Wallace stepped forward. "And the team, they go with her," Parson said. "All 11, including you. Master Chief." "Understood." Cassidy didn't smile, but in her eyes, something steadied. They hadn't just survived sabotage. They'd earned the right to become something new. That night, as the C-130 prepped for wheels up, the team assembled one last time at the edge of the range. Thompson approached her as the others loaded up. "You knew it was Brooks," he said quietly. "Suspected," she replied. "And the hit expected." He shook his head. "How do you stay ahead of everything?" Cassidy looked toward the ocean, its black horizon endless and cold. "Because in the Ghost program," she said softly, "if you're not ahead, you're already gone." And with that, she boarded the plane. Behind her, the rest followed. A new chapter waited in the desert. And this time, no one would underestimate what they were building. 3 months later, Greystone facility, Nevada. The Nevada sky didn't forgive mistakes. It was dry, brutal, and exposed every weakness under its sun. There were no trees to hide behind, no windbreaks, just heat, dust, and silence broken only by gunfire and breath. Greystone was buried in a valley carved out by time and budget secrecy. No GPS tags, no cell towers, a forgotten corner of land, known only by satellite numbers and classified coordinates. It was the perfect place to build a future no one else believed in, and the Ghosts had adapted fast. Cassidy Harper watched the range from behind polarized glass. The readout on the tablet beside her showed metrics she once thought theoretical. Now, they were routine. 12 confirmed hits, all targets moving, all distances between 200 and 800 meters. Wind unpredictable, elevation extreme, shot windows under 5 seconds, And yet every member of the new Ghost integration unit had just cleared the simulation together, in pairs. Wallace stepped into the control room, holding 2 bottles of water. He passed one to her, then glanced at the screen. "They're ready," he said. Cassidy nodded once. "I know." He leaned against the edge of the console. "I've never seen anything like this." "That's because it's never existed before," she replied. He watched the playback again. Thompson's timing, Jenkins' pairing sync. Even Martinez, who'd struggled early, was now operating at near-elite precision without a word from a spotter. Wallace shook his head slowly. 3 months ago, these men were proud, skilled, confident, but limited. They didn't even know it. And now Cassidy asked. He smiled. Now they're dangerous. The transition hadn't been easy. When they arrived at Greystone, the desert nearly broke them. The first week saw dehydration, blistered palms, and failed heat acclimation drills. Brooks' betrayal had left a shadow on the unit, one Cassidy didn't rush to erase. Instead, she worked it into the program. Every lesson was sharpened by purpose. Every failure traced back to ego, rigidity, or fear of letting go. By the second month that fear was gone, they began adapting, almost evolving. Their bodies started to time movements, not against breath, but within it. They fired while moving, without pausing, and still hit with surgical accuracy. Not recklessly, but rhythmically. It was poetry, written in ballistics. Cassidy watched them become something new. Mission day, -4. The team gathered in the tactical conference room. No rank displays, no salutes, just 12 operators, Wallace and Cassidy seated at a circular table. Everyone equal. Cassidy tapped the screen, and the 3D map of their target zone shimmered into view. "This isn't just your first deployment," she said. "It's the proof of concept. You succeed. This doctrine spreads. You fail, Ghost goes back into the vault." Jenkins frowned. "Why not just keep it small? Stay covert." Cassidy met his eyes. "Because the threats we face aren't staying small. There are hostile units abroad who've begun replicating our techniques without our ethics." Thompson nodded. "So we become the blueprint." Cassidy confirmed. "You're not just operators now. You're architects." She changed the slide. The next screen showed projected impact scenarios, fewer casualties, faster target neutralization, mission flexibility beyond current doctrine. It was bold, unbelievable, unless you'd seen it yourself. Wallace leaned forward, glancing at the team. "You've all pushed past what anyone thought possible, but now you need to understand this mission isn't just about hitting targets. It's about proving that Ghost isn't a fluke, that it's a foundation." Cassidy stood. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried. "You're not just the best marksman in the Navy," she said. "You're the first soldiers to see the edge of human potential and step beyond it." Silence followed. The kind of silence that comes before movement. And then, one by one, they stood. Mission day, -1, nightfall. Cassidy stood outside her quarters, looking out at the distant horizon where range met stars. She heard the door behind her open softly. Wallace joined her. He held a folder. Command cleared the mission parameters. He said, "You're greenlit. Target confirmed." He nodded. "High altitude intercept. Window under 3 minutes. Ghost methods the only viable option." She didn't answer right away. Her gaze stayed on the stars. "You ever think we'd make it here?" she asked. Wallace chuckled. 3 months ago, I thought you were a mistake." And now he exhaled. "Now I'm proud to be wrong." He hesitated, then handed her the folder. She opened it, skimmed the final approval signatures, then paused. "You changed your endorsement line," she noted. Wallace shrugged. Felt right. The new line read, "Co-signed Master Chief Owen Wallace, Executive Officer, Ghost Division." She closed the folder. "You're not just part of this, Owen. You helped shape it." He smiled faintly. "I spent my career teaching men to reach the edge. You taught them to step beyond it." Mission day, pre-dawn, The ghost team stood on the tarmac, geared, silent. No flag ceremony, no press, no acknowledgement. Just a nod from Cassidy, a returned one from Wallace, and then they loaded into the aircraft. As the ramp closed and the wind screamed outside, Thompson tapped his rifle once. "Let's make history." No one answered. They didn't need to. In the control room, Admiral Parsons stood beside Director Kell, watching the blip disappear from radar. "You ever think this would work?" Kell asked. Parson kept his arms crossed. "No, I thought it would burn out in politics." And now Parson didn't answer right away. Then finally, "Now I think we've just redrawn the battlefield." Kell adjusted his glasses. "What about opposition? You think the old guard will stay quiet?" Parsons' eyes narrowed. "No, but they're behind now, and we're moving fast." That night, after the aircraft vanished into the desert dark, Cassidy sat alone in the operations bay. She didn't sleep. She never did before missions. Instead, she opened a new page in her notebook, wrote a single line. "It's not about the distance. It's about who dares to cross it." The door behind her creaked. Wallace stepped in with 2 mugs of coffee. "You still writing those?" he asked. "Only when it matters?" He handed her one. "You ready for what comes after this?" She took the cup, let the steam hit her face. "I'm not sure anyone is," she said, "but we'll be the first to meet it." They sat in silence. Partners, survivors, builders of something no one believed in until now. And as the morning approached, the line between legend and future blurred into one. Because some people train to reach the limit, and some are born to go beyond it.